Two balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires. Swinging a drive. Deep left field. This is way back. Welcome on. Let's
What's up, everyone? Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined today by Justin Lorber. Justin, thanks for being here. Let's talk a little minor league Rule 5 draft. There's not a whole lot going on in Major League Baseball, but we did have a minor league Rule 5 draft. The Dodgers select 3 players, a couple interesting names. So what can you tell us about the 3 guys that the Dodgers ended up with?
So their first pick in the draft is Kekai Rios. I think I'm pronouncing his first name right. He's a catcher from the Brewers organization, was a 28th rounder back in 2018. Is regarded as very strong defensively, not too much of an offensive impact player. Should provide some catching depth at the upper levels of the minors, where the Dodgers don't really have that much depth right now. I think you're probably looking at sending him to Double-A, where he got briefly to in 2021, but only played a handful of games. Probably looking at a Double-A catcher duo of Carson Taylor, the Dodgers' 4th-round pick from 2020, and Rios. And then their second 2 picks were regarded as pretty interesting. Carson Fulmer and John Duplantier. Both are former top prospects. Fulmer was the 8th overall pick back in 2015. He was in the same draft class out of Vanderbilt as Dansby Swanson and Walker Buehler. Was actually taken about 15 spots ahead of Buehler. And we know how that turned out.
Yeah, two separate career paths, safe to say.
Very, very much. He's bounced around the last few years. And Duplantier is another former highly regarded prospect, was a top 100 guy at one point. Hasn't had the major league career that I think some people would have foreseen in 2018, 2019, but those are pitching prospects. There's the old saying, there's no such thing as a pitching prospect, and that kind of comes into play with Duplantier and Fulmer. Both number 27. So they're both interesting, and Baseball America wrote an article about this. It's an interesting strategy because both guys were essentially signed to minor league deals. Fulmer was outrighted off the 40-man roster by the Reds, and Duplantier was signed by the Giants to a minor league deal a couple days before the Rule 5 draft. So what they essentially did is they signed those guys to minor league deals by taking them in this draft. And I don't think anyone should expect them to make major league contributions, but they're 2 interesting names for sure. Fulmer, still some interesting stuff there. His cutter, I think, is interesting in the sense that it's very similar to Caleb Ferguson's cutter, which I think a lot of people know is a slider, but it's labeled on Savant as a cutter. Very similar movement profile. It's like a mid to high 80s cutter, not like the Kenley Jansen low to mid 90s cutter, more like a slider. So I think that's interesting. What they end up doing with his pitch mix is something that's interesting to me. But yeah, none of these guys should really be expected to make major league contributions in the future.
Because basically, in order to be eligible, and you correct me where I'm wrong, you have to have been sort of accrued enough amount of service time, minor league service time or whatever, and then also not only be not on the 40-man roster, but you also aren't on the AAA roster, which there's like another level of protection that teams can have by adding guys to their AAA roster. So the guys that are being selected here are older prospects who are not among the top like 70-ish guys in a given organization. Is that right?
Yeah, they're older. And with Duplantier and Fulmer, I'm not sure if it was a case of not protecting them. It was just, maybe they just didn't think anyone would take them. Fulmer was outrighted off the 40-man roster and sent to Double-A. Duplantier was signed to a minor league deal and just assigned to Double-A. Who knows if that would have been his initial assignment in spring training next year. But it ended up making them both eligible.
Yeah.
And you are right. So it's anyone who is eligible for the Rule 5 major league portion of the draft is also eligible for the Rule 5 minor league portion, except teams can protect, I think it's 38 players on the AAA roster and protect them from the minor league portion. So sometimes you see, younger players who are Rule 5 eligible, but are nowhere close to AAA. The Dodgers had 2 of those guys taken, one from High A, one from the Complex League. Those are the 2 guys the Dodgers lost. So sometimes you see those guys taken. Sometimes you see a lot of relievers. I think that was a good majority of the picks, relievers who might have an interesting pitch mix. Yeah. And again, the majority of these guys who were taken are not going to make the majors.
Yeah.
And even those that do might not make really a big impact. But still interesting because the Dodgers did use a kind of novel strategy and going after Fulmer and Duplantier.
Yeah, and you mentioned Dodgers lose 2 players, Nelfrey Contreras and Carlos Santiago. I mean, anything there as the prospect guy? Like, are those names that you're concerned about losing?
So Santiago was he kind of came out of nowhere this summer. Fangraphs just put him in their top 20 list for the Dodgers organization. And I'll be honest, I did not know who he was before that. So that was interesting because, they do very good coverage, especially in Arizona. Their coverage is top notch, which is where the Dodgers complex lead is. So he started off okay, did not end the year well, really high whiff rate, a lot of strikeouts, although he was playing as a 20-year-old in the complex league. So still a very young player. Ultimately, if he becomes a major league player, I don't know how upset you would be because he's so far away from the majors. You're looking at a guy who will be 21 next summer and, just going to start out in low A. Maybe he makes it to high A. So no one that fans should really be too concerned about.
Yeah, by the time, if he were to make the majors, it'd be 5 years from now. We would have totally forgotten that he was ever in the Dodgers system and that he was a part of this Rule 5 minor league draft. So there you go. Dodgers had a few guys, couple interesting names you've heard of, which are unique in the minor league Rule 5 draft. Mostly it's guys you haven't heard of, but they add some catching depth and they add a couple pitching arms, prospect arms that, who knows, maybe they could reclaim some value. Dodgers could do some player development magic there. So Justin, we appreciate you joining us. That's Justin Lorber. You can check his stuff out at Future Dodgers and FutureDodgers.com. We appreciate you guys joining us. Check out DodgerBlue.com, DodgerBlue1958. Make sure you're subscribed here. Ring the notification bell as well. We appreciate you. We'll see you next time.